Hey everybody, this is video 3, which is going to guide you through completion of assignment 2, which is just labeled classical conditioning activity, and it just says classical conditioning at the top. I filled this out, and so we're going to walk through the instructions together. So open up your document on your computer or take out your hard printed copy and we'll walk through it together. Essentially what you're doing here is completing the diagram, completing those 4 boxes, just like was demonstrated in the lecture. Refer to slides 4 through 7 of your PowerPoint to help you with a reference if you need it. The instructions say fill in the relevant information in each box. First, name the unconditioned stimulus and the unconditioned response. Remember, US and UR. The unconditioned response should naturally occur in response to the unconditioned stimulus. In Pavlov's experiment, food was the unconditioned stimulus, and the dog's salivation was the unconditioned response. I talked in video 2, if you watched it, about baby Albert as another classic example of classical conditioning. And I completed the diagram as per the baby Albert experiment. So in the first box, the unconditioned stimulus was a loud bang. The unconditioned response, baby Albert became startled and started crying. Box number 2, introduce the neutral stimulus and indicate what response, if any, this produces. In Pavlov's experiment, the neutral stimulus was a bell, and the reaction was that the dogs didn't salivate. The neutral stimulus should not in any way be associated with the unconditioned response. It should essentially be meaningless to the subject. In the baby Albert example, the neutral stimulus was the stuffed toy bunny, which, yeah, baby Albert may have had a reaction to. Maybe he liked it, maybe he played with it, but that reaction had nothing to do with the unconditioned response of him getting startled and starting to cry. In step 3, diagram the process that occurs during conditioning. Look at the top above boxes 1 and 2, it says before conditioning, and above box 3, it says during conditioning. This happens when you pair the unconditioned stimulus with the neutral stimulus in order to elicit the response, which is still the unconditioned response. In Pavlov's experiment, the conditioning occurred when he rang the bell at the same time as presenting the dogs with the food. So he paired the neutral stimulus, the bell, with the unconditioned stimulus, the food, producing the unconditioned response, salivation. In the baby Albert example, the loud bang occurring while baby Albert's playing with the stuffed rabbit causes baby Albert to get startled and start crying. Understand, conditioning occurs over the period of time. There have to be repeated trials, repeated exposure, repeated associations in order for learning to occur. And that's what you're going to show in box 4, is what happens after learning has occurred. The instructions say, diagram the scenario after conditioning, demonstrating that the neutral stimulus has become a conditioned stimulus. In Pavlov's experiment, the bell caused the dogs to salivate. The bell, which was the neutral stimulus, has now become a conditioned stimulus because the dogs learned to salivate in response to the bell. The salivation in response to the bell has now become a conditioned response. What was formerly an unconditioned response, because it occurred naturally, has now become a conditioned response because it occurs in response to a conditioned stimulus. Dogs salivated in response to the bell. They would have no reason to do so unless they had learned to associate the bell with the food. They hear the bell, they think the food's coming, and so they salivate in anticipation. In the baby Albert case, when baby Albert eventually was presented with the stuffed bunny, he became startled and scared and started to cry. Whereas previously he did not elicit that response after being presented with the stuffed bunny. He was conditioned to associate the bunny with that feeling of fear in response to being startled. The bunny has now become a conditioned stimulus, and the fear and crying has become the conditioned response. Okay, now it's on you. You've been presented with two classical examples of classical conditioning, and now it's on you to try and come up with your own. You can use the internet, you can research examples, but you can't copy and paste. You got to write out the process and use your own words to do so. And you can't obviously use Pavlov's example or the Baby Albert example. Find your own. All right. If you need me, please feel free to reach out. Again, here's my email address, mrschwartz42@gmail.com. And hopefully you get this done and submitted back to Mr. Demo. And I will also be presenting some more information for you about operant conditioning, which is a different kind of learning. All right. That's it for now.